Welcome to the webinar, Keeping Students Safe Online, Context and Resources for Adults, presented by Erin Runnion. This webinar is produced by the California Child Abduction Task Force, a project of the Center for Innovation and Resources. The mission of the California Child Abduction Task Force is to reduce the risk and incidence of child abduction and to increase the effectiveness of a multidisciplinary response by enhancing skills, knowledge, and awareness of child abduction. Funding for this project comes from the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, also known as Cal-OES. For more resources and trainings, visit www.childabductions.org.
Hi, I'm Erin Runnion. I am the founding director of the Joyful Child Foundation in memory of my daughter, Samantha. And I'm going to be sharing with you today about how we can teach and enforce best practices to keep our young people safe online and using all forms of communications technology. To begin, I want to share with you a little bit about the Joyful Child Foundation. I started this organization over 17 years ago when my daughter Samantha was abducted while she was playing outside with her best friend. She was found the next day having been sexually assaulted and murdered. It was just 11 days before her 6th birthday. And I'm going to share some of the statistics that got me started in this work, because when Samantha was taken, I thought the chances of my child being abducted by a complete stranger were next to nothing. And the more that I learned about the spectrum of crimes against children, the more determined I was to ensure that her story continued to be a catalyst to inspire and motivate all of us to do our best to be proactive about better protecting and empowering our children to safely navigate this world. So the Joyful Child Foundation has been providing prevention education for over 17 years throughout Orange County and beyond. We have an elementary curriculum that we've trained over 350 teachers to offer safety education in the classroom. And we also provide direct service workshops to youth service agencies that serve our highest risk, most vulnerable children. And in addition to that, we have programs for adults. So we have a parent presentation, and I'm going to share some of that with you here today. And we also have staff training for both teachers on the curriculum as well as youth agency staff who are going to teach those workshops in conjunction with the BRAVE program. All of our programs for educators include risk reduction strategies to prevent adult sexual misconduct in educational settings, because sadly, research was done several years ago and it showed that about 10% of all of our children in the United States experience some form of adult sexual misconduct in an educational setting. So it's really critical that we be proactive about preventing that and educating our staff and setting expectations of behavior to reduce that risk. Today specifically, I am going to talk about why and how to teach and enforce best practices for young people to be safe online. And I'm going to share some typical tips to recognize and stop predatory behaviors, whether it's in person or online, and strategies to reduce our children's vulnerabilities. And I'm also going to introduce you to what the Be Brave, Be Safe empowerment program looks like for children. So this is one of the statistics that first got me started in this work. When I realized that 1 in 4 to 5 girls and 1 to 7 to 10 boys in this country are sexually assaulted before the age of 18, I was compelled to do something to stop it. This is a pandemic issue that devastates lives in every socioeconomic, cultural, religious background across this country. And there is no specific group of the population that is more or less at risk. This affects all of us. And the myth of stranger danger, I have to be clear, given that my daughter was in fact abducted by a complete stranger. And I should mention, he was caught and convicted on all counts. He's never getting out. But while what happened to my daughter is on the most extreme end of the spectrum of these crimes, the vast majority of all crimes against children are perpetrated by someone the family knows and trusts. And that is actually good news for us as parents, because it means that there is something that we can do to prevent the vast majority of crimes against children. But we have to work together and we have to be brave advocates for our children. Most child abusers do not use weapons or force when it comes to sexual abuse. They use and abuse our trust to gain legitimate access to our children. Abduction, assault, and trafficking of our children is, again, an issue that this country is only just now grappling with. The largest groups of victims of all sexual assault across this country are young girls ages 15 to 24. They are most vulnerable to sexual assault, just when, right, we have allowed them greater independence, and they are at a critically vulnerable age. Over 100,000 people are coerced or forced into prostitution every year in the US, underage. And of those, your average age of a first-year trafficking victim is just 13 years old. 60% of trafficking victims are runaway youth. And every year there are somewhere between 1.5 million up almost to 3 million children who are either run away or thrown away. And in other words, their family tells them, don't come back. Those are our most vulnerable children. And 1/3 of runaways are solicited within that first 48 hours for sexual abuse and trafficking. Childhood sexual abuse survivors are 28 times more likely to be trafficked than children who were not already sexually abused. 65 to 80% of trafficking victims have had some involvement with child protective services. Predatory behaviors and pimps, it's very important that people understand this, often start as adolescents. Over half of them do. And so when we're talking about predatory behaviors, we are not only speaking about adult males. The vast majority of convicted offenders are in fact males, but predators can be male, female, and indeed, they often begin when they themselves hit puberty. Most of the trafficking, grooming, and luring that is happening to our young people is happening at school, through young people, and at regular parties of teens, or where they go and hang out at the mall or wherever. It is during these normal activities for our young people that trafficking victims are being groomed and lured and often abducted. And technology is also used both for the grooming of these young victims as well as for the sales, the exploitation. So the Joyful Child Foundation is committed to a public health approach to stop the epidemic of child sexual abuse. We all must consider the possibility that known and trusted adults in our child's circle of trust may, in fact, take an opportunity to abuse a child. We have to identify and get better at recognizing those patterns of behavior that socially skilled child molesters use. And we have to be brave about establishing and enforcing clear boundaries as parents to eliminate opportunities for grooming and for molestation. So it's very important, again, that folks understand that the vast majority of these crimes are not the boogeyman type things. They are not somebody hiding behind the corner and jumping out at our young people and grabbing them. Yes, that happens, but that accounts for less than 5% of all sexual abuse of our young. The vast majority are groomers who get to know the family, get to know the child, make that child feel safe, become trusted adults in that child's life so that they have the opportunity to be alone with them, to develop a relationship with the child that they are trusting enough of that adult that they will do things that they otherwise would not have done, that they suddenly are in a relationship with this special adult that makes them especially vulnerable. And it can take a few months and it can take years. Grooming behaviors do not follow any particular pattern, except that the goal is to have the child trust them enough that they can manipulate them. And while we are all safer at home during the coronavirus pandemic, the truth is that grooming is happening online across this country more so than ever before, because our children are spending more time online and they are more isolated. They need the social interaction. And that's really my message to parents and to educators is to create safe environments online for our children to socialize, because those that do not have that connection are most vulnerable to the grooming tactics of online predators. So characteristics of your typical sex offender. The largest study ever done involved 4,000 admitted child molesters. Almost 80% were Caucasian, 77% were married, 93% attended church regularly, 46% had some college education, and 65% were employed. So if you go across the nation, this is largely in keeping with the demographics of the United States, except for how often they're going to church. And I make that point only to share that it comes again down to that grooming behavior. If we are in our faith-based communities, we assume that we are all on the same moral page. And that is one less barrier for someone who is trying to gain legitimate access to our children. If we trust them in terms of their morality, well, then certainly they're not going to molest my child. And that is an assumption that we cannot make. Groomer profile, exceptionally charming, helpful without wanting anything in return. This is terrible. And if you look at the screen, you can see that I'm referencing the work of Carla Van Dam. She wrote several books identifying child molesters and the socially skilled child molester. But this is adapted from her work. And I always share with parents that I don't want you to be afraid of every nice and charming, helpful person. The key is that they are seeking opportunities to be alone with children. And that would be the same whether they're in person or online. They prefer the company of children. There are lots of adult gaming sites. There are lots of adult gaming groups. It is not normal for an adult to want to hang out on a server that primarily services games for young people. That is a red flag. They don't often feel comfortable with their own peers. Very genuinely, a lot of child molesters actually prefer the company of children. They are more comfortable around them. They very often will show special attention to a specific child or a certain type of child based on how they look, their type. But about half of all child molesters actually change their target victims, not based on how they look or even their gender or age, but based on their opportunity. If a child is very receptive to this person's attention, it gives that person an opportunity. And that's all they really need. When it comes to one of the ways that we can best discern whether or not someone is a mentor versus a potential predatory groomer, child molester, looking for an opportunity to develop special relationships with children, it's noticing how they behave. Very often, predators will use the same kind of language and play like a child, play like a young person, even if that child is a teenager. They're still children in my view, but they will look to fit in with their target victims and become a special older friend within that circle of friends. So it's very important, and one of the ways that you can identify whether or not this perhaps is a parent who's on the server just to play with their child in an online environment, or if it's a predatory person looking for an opportunity, is whether or not they correct, whether or not they say anything when children are inappropriate, when they say something that is rude or offensive, do they correct it? Because most parents and decent mentors will correct that kind of behavior. If you're looking to be one of those special friends in that group, you're going to let that slide because, you're special. We have a special connection. And that is really their default, is to make young people feel like they are unlike any other older person that they've ever had a relationship with. And it's really because your child is so special. That's the key. They make your child feel special. Very often in person, there's roughhousing and tickling, what we call touching liberties, to normalize the physical behaviors, but also because it's a great excuse. If you were in the middle of a game and the child is like, "You just touched me." "No, oh my God, that was an accident, no problem." It's an easy excuse, and it makes it harder to enforce. It makes it harder to call them out on it. Seeks to obtain instant friend status. That's what I was referring to about going to church. It's creating that intimate connection with somebody socially as quickly as possible. They often get angry, depressed, or totally disappear when they are denied access, right? If they're not allowed to be alone with that target, with that child, they get angry. They might accuse you of being paranoid. They may disappear, but they also may become depressed because this might be a relationship that they were cultivating for quite a long time. And that is all part of actually the manipulation, hoping that they will make your child so sad, make you feel guilty for destroying this wonderful friendship that was developing between them, that kind of thing. Stand firm. It is all part of manipulative, predatory behavior. And ultimately, they will fail to honor whatever boundaries or rules you set. So give that time, because when they cross that boundary, it gives you another reason to finalize the end of that relationship. And that is critically important as early as possible. Trust yourself as a parent. If your child is suddenly talking about somebody and you have no idea who this person is, converse with them. They should be willing to talk with you. They should be willing to let you in to see what's happening. Because a safe adult, a mentor, friend, a safe adult would want the parent involved. They want your child to succeed and to be safe. They're not going to object to your participation. Potentially dangerous behaviors. Again, adults and adolescents, teenagers do not generally prefer the company of young children or even younger children, younger teens. They don't hang out and watch children play in person or online unless they have to, because they're family, they're being paid, they're checking on their safety online. If you see that behavior, it does not necessarily mean that somebody is being a predator. It could just be that they have very bad boundaries. That's their problem. Be alert, be obvious. Your presence, both in person and online, eliminates the opportunity for predators to groom our young people. If a child goes missing, obviously call 911. In a store, ask for Code Adam, and that is a national program. Just about every chain store in the country participates in it. And what happens with the Code Adam is they lock the doors and they don't let any child out until the missing child is found. It's very, very effective. At home, search in closets, cars, trunks, large appliances, under beds and tables. Young little people, especially if you have very small children, they're like cats. I can't tell you how many parents have told me that they found their child curled up in a laundry basket in the closet. Do not touch their belongings except to ask their friends if they know where your child is. But otherwise, let the investigators do the investigating. Just call 911. If there's any reason for you to believe that your child is in real danger, call 911. Provide photos on an ID kit, and I'll go into that very briefly. Answer law enforcement's questions openly and honestly. Their number one priority legally is to find your child. And in California, if a missing person is under 21 or at risk, law enforcement must submit that missing persons report for your young person within 2 hours to the state's Department of Justice unit, as well as the National Crime Center. So states have varying laws on specific protocols and such, but in California, law enforcement agencies must accept any report of a missing person, including repeat runaways. Parents need to know that, and law enforcement needs to know that. It is critical that we keep track of those children. Those are exactly our most vulnerable children, are those repeat runaways. That is no reason not to take that report. Reports submitted to state agencies and national law enforcement databases allow for additional resources to be deployed to help find a missing person, even if it does not necessarily meet the Amber Alert criteria. So the Amber Alert, America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response, was passed here in the state of California signed into emergency effect 3 days after my daughter was murdered. And it is an incredibly effective resource for all of our families across the nation. But in California, they are really doing an amazing job. We have over 98% recovery thanks to the Amber Alert here. Confirmed abduction is a requirement, including parental abductions. You can, in fact, have an Amber Alert for a parental abduction. The child has to be 17 years old or younger or have a developmental disability. The child is at a serious risk of injury or death, and there is enough information available that, if shared, could actually assist in the safe recovery of the young victim. So those are the Amber Alert criteria in the state of California specifically, but they carry across the nation, just the language might be slightly different. When a child is reported missing, special resources are available even if the case does not meet that criteria. As I said, endangered missing alerts can be used as an alternative in most states, and they have flyers distributed via email, cell phones, and now with social media, we have people who are driving and they get those notifications as passengers, and they look out, and we are getting a lot of calls from people who are commuting, and it is thanks to Twitter feeds and social media. So that is not, the Amber Alert is not your only option, and it's important for parents to know that even without that, the chances of their safely recovering their child are still very good. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children also has lots of resources available for parents. I do want to encourage you, particularly while we are all safer at home, this is a great time to spend a little time creating your child ID kits. I highly recommend the FBI's free child ID app. You can put it on your phone, and the reality is, of course, if you were going to have a situation like my daughter's, it's not likely to happen from your own home. But when you're out and about and you hear you have an app with your child ID right there, as soon as you activate it, the FBI is notified, and other local law enforcement are as well. So it's a great, very handy, and it expedites the entire investigation. And in the case of an actual stranger abduction, those critical first hours mean the world, and that they mean everything in terms of bringing that child home safely. These are just some ideas that you can have in your ID kit. I recommend you just grab a big manila envelope, put their report cards in there, keep their list of safe adults, their birth certificate, their dental records, all in one place, and that also serves to provide a very useful child ID kit in the event that anything happens to your child. When it comes specifically to being safe online, I want parents to understand that as much as we may resist how important communications technology and online socialization and games have impacted and changed our family life and dynamics and how children really learn, especially now. Well, for one thing, can you imagine going through this pandemic without communications technology? The benefits are huge. And as a society, we are not going backward when it comes to online learning and leveraging communications technology. What's important to understand is that these online experiences for children are just as important to them as it was for my generation and older to go out and hang out with their friends and at the park or at their house in person. It's no longer about the board games and, just being physically together. They get as much socially when they're online. So if you want to keep your child safe online and you want to let your child know just fundamentally that you care about what they care about, play with them online. Ask them to show you their favorite new apps and video games. Who are they following on YouTube or on other social media platforms? Show that you're interested in what they care about. That is how you start the conversation. First, you kind of extend that olive branch. I want to know about what you love about this game, about this influencer, what have you, right? Let them teach you how to play and use their devices. My daughter has a Switch. I didn't know how to use that, right? I had her show me how to play her favorite game. And you don't have to be good at it, right? You don't have to be competitive about it. But once you're actually engaging, then when you say, can I see how the settings are? What are the privacy settings on this kind of game? Suddenly you're there already, and your child can show you, and you can walk through, and you have a discussion around the parameters for being safe on that specific device, on that specific app or game. And it's a great way to begin to teach children how to be safe online, one game at a time. Discuss health and safety issues or concerns, right? So if you do see something that makes you worried, talk about it, be honest. You know, we parents have this sense that we all have to be experts at everything. It's okay that you're not. The truth is, chances are your young person is far more adept at being safe online than you even give them credit for. What they don't have is the perspective and the context. They don't have an understanding of predatory behavior and the fact that there are always people who are looking for an opportunity to take advantage of someone. Unfortunately, those people do exist in every aspect of our lives, including online. So talk about it. Talk about your concerns. These are just some of the primary ones, but the fact that your child can be exposed to unfiltered content and unlimited communication, that's a concern right there. It's reason enough to have a conversation today. The physical impact on not just their bodies, but specifically their eyes, their posture. We're going to have a generation of hunchbacks if we're not careful. Sleep and exercise, all of those things, balancing their time and their energy and their focused time, not just with online things, but active learning, physically, tangibly doing things, whether it's sports or hobbies, arts. Our brains need that, our minds need that, and emotionally, we need that to be balanced people. Self-image is another concern online, especially for our young girls, but really across the board. We develop unrealistic kind of online profiles and lifestyles, and we're looking at these things and wondering what's wrong with us, right? This family is doing this, that, and this during quarantine. They're so cool. Look at their pool, whatever, right? We just start comparing ourselves. And especially our 12 to 16-year-olds, it's a habit that needs to be broken early, and it's very important to talk about it. Identity theft, full name, address, phone, school, talk about all of the things that can lead somebody to their location and can even just allow them to open a bank account in their name, because that does happen to children. Children are just as vulnerable to identity theft as adults. Cyberbullying, friends, right? Online friends posting messages or images of private messages or text messages. It's, again, critical that young people understand that every single thing sent via any form of communications technology can be saved and shared and disseminated worldwide in an instant. So they really do need to think about what they are sharing, whether it's in a private message or a public post. And talk about what stalking is and grooming and exploitation, because our most vulnerable children are those who have no idea that such things exist in the world. Age appropriately, have those conversations. Agree on a reasonable limit for screen time across all devices. Talk about it. You know, I want to encourage parents, particularly now when we are in this stay-at-home phase where all of our social interaction really is online. It's a good time to revisit and maybe reestablish communication around what is appropriate, what is reasonable right now. Is it the same as it was when we were in school, physical school, brick and mortar schools, or is it okay for children to be spending a little bit more time playing games with their friends on an online game than it was before? Because that's the only time they're going to get to hang out with those friends. So please consider it, and please actually talk with them, because ultimately you want your child to behave in a way that keeps them safe, whether you're watching them or have your internet, privacy, parental settings on or not, right? You want them to make those safe choices no matter where they are in their lives. So engage them in the critical thinking around that. Give them some credit for that conversation. Basic safety when it comes to technology, all of those devices get charged either in your bedroom as a safe adult or in a public space in the house. The worst thing is to let your children go to bed with their phones and their other devices where they can get notifications in the middle of the night and end up in conversations in the dark. That is where the vast majority of predatory grooming conversations happen. It's also where a lot of phishing happens in terms of people sending random text messages and just trying to get somebody to respond. And cyberbullying, all of that is primarily done in the evenings when parents aren't watching. Devices belong to you. Make that clear, hopefully from the first time that you gave them a device. Every device that connects to the outside world actually belongs to you. It is for you to use. Merry Christmas. So who may look at them? Who may look at them because you own them? That's you. So just let that be a ground rule from the beginning, that your child knows that you can always pop in, that they are never to switch the screens. You want to see the conversations they're having. You want to check out their games. And again, if you do it for fun, then it's less awkward when you're trying to just casually check on what they're doing, right? Look at the security settings. Location settings, it's very important for parents to understand that if the location settings on a phone in particular, but also tablets, if those are not off, then any photograph or video taken with that device, in the code of that image when it's digital, it actually has their location. It literally has GPS coordinates. So very important that any pictures or videos taken for the purposes of sharing online, location services off. That's under the privacy settings on your phone. Privacy when it comes to social media and other online games and apps, referring to who can see what they post and who can communicate with your child, how we designate friends. Again, that's a conversation with your child because it does differ from app or game or platform, and so again, engage them in that conversation. Who's on here? How many people can be on here? Is there a monitor? Show me your settings and go through them with them one by one. They'll get you there much faster, trust me. Notifications, sleep notifications. Again, on the phones and most computers now, you can have those things shut down automatically at bedtime. It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea, especially if you do in fact let them take anything to their room during the night. Some recommendations for a brave plan for your child to be safe online. Children need to understand and agree to not use any apps or platforms that allow total anonymity, okay? There needs to be an IP address or a cell phone number attached to those apps. If that is not the case, as is almost all of these images on this slide allow for anonymity. You can't track. It takes a lot for law enforcement to track who actually posted anything on there. But lots of these apps are used to fish, to lure, to find a child, a young person who is vulnerable and looking for a new special friend. And they start on these anonymous apps and then have them move to email or text messaging once they get to know them there. So talk with them about live video streaming. Is that allowed in your house? Is that not? Discuss it. Is it allowed to be shared publicly with the whole world, like TikTok, or no? Is it only with your close friends? That's, again, a privacy friends setting. Apps that hide other apps. So that's what this is on the bottom here, that calculator. A lot of them look like calculators, or they look like a safe. And the thing about them is you click on that icon on the phone, and it makes you give a password. It's a calculator, for heaven's sakes, right? No, it's an app that hides other apps. So they can put other ones like these inside of that icon and let them know that you know that such a thing exists. And again, check their devices, click on all the the icons and make sure that you're okay with the settings on all of them. Your child agrees not to share digital photos, videos, or live stream online or via text, email, apps, right? And discuss these questions. If it may cause anyone harm, I'm not going to share it. Whatever it is, whether it's an image or a text message or just a comment on somebody else's post, I'm not going to share it with anyone if he or she has not yet met me in person, right? If I don't know them, I'm not going to send them anything if I don't know them in person without specific permission first, right? If they want to share personal information or they want to share with somebody for the first time, they need to ask you. You need to know who it is and what's being shared. It's fair because particularly when you think about online safety, we're talking about people coming to be able to find out exactly where we live. And that puts it's a family safety issue. It's beyond just any one person in the house. So in Be Brave, Be Safe, our elementary curriculum lessons include personal safety, home safety, online safety, questionable behaviors, safety outside. It's pretty comprehensive. And when the pandemic struck, we wanted to make these lessons available to you online. All of our lessons tie to a traffic light. That's kind of our risk assessment tool, if you will. So a red light is an emergency. It's stop, get away, get help fast. If there's no safe adult there to help, we call 911. A yellow light means something doesn't feel right, but I'm not sure. If something makes you question, we recommend young people check with 2 safe adults before moving forward. And finally, a green light means nobody's in danger. And to take you on a quick tour of what a technology safety lesson might look like, these are available right now. When the pandemic struck, we wanted to make it easier on parents to be homeschooling from their homes and to offer an opportunity to have some of those meaningful conversations about safety that we all intend to have, but very often take for granted until there's an imminent danger, right? So this pandemic has given us an opportunity to take the time to have those important conversations. And so we have actually shared our lessons, just an example of each lesson online to help parents guide them through that conversation. So you can subscribe right here at thejoyfulchild.org. And you can also access under programs based on your child's age. We have resources for you or specific information just for parents because we don't use the same language. I have no interest in scaring the heck out of children. Our goal is to empower them to be safe, to be brave, so that they can navigate this world and reach for their dreams, not out of fear, but out of courage. And you can download these free activities that have resources and literally activity sheets for talking with your children, but also that your children can fill out little worksheets that they can do. There's recommended books that you can buy online right there. And when you do the lessons, when you subscribe to get the lessons, you get a new one each week. The technology one looks something like this for the young ones. And it just takes them through definitions, personal information and what privacy is, right? There's some things that are yours and that are not for everyone to see. You should have some control over how these things are shared. And that applies both to private parts as well as private information. We go through the traffic light, as I referred to. What are those red light things that could happen online, right? Someone sends a message that says someone may get hurt. Someone wants me to send something, an inappropriate image of myself. There's a potential danger, right? I'm not sure. Messages with links. Children don't know not to click on those links if you have not had a conversation. There are such things as computer viruses as well. And they make one computer sick, and that sick computer sends it to another computer. It is a thing, and I think children will understand it better now than ever before, really. A friend asks me to play a game that I know my parents would not approve of, right? That's a yellow light. They should check. They should make sure that it's okay. My friend created an online account without telling a safe adult. What do you want your young person to do in those kinds of situations? Do you want them to tell you? Do you want them to tell their parent? Are you going to make the phone call to the parent? I am playing an online game, but there are no other users in my game. That's generally pretty safe. I like it. I'm using the internet to help with homework. I sent my friends and family pictures. The key is that we want children to understand that because everything they post can in fact be shared and disseminated worldwide and is virtually impossible to make go away permanently, we want them to always be thinking about putting their best self online. They want whatever they share, we want it to be the best version of themselves. So, and think of it like their profile, right? Whatever device it is, what I want my whole family to see what I'm about to do. Would I want all of the students and teachers at my school to see it? Does it make me feel good to share this, to post this? And could it hurt someone else? So those are the brave and safe questions that we encourage children to ask. These slides on the technology lesson really are just designed to help parents guide them through that conversation. And when you get the link, when you subscribe, it'll look like this, and you have the different lessons. This is an introduction to the program, and then the technology lesson. And then when you click on the resources for that lesson, there's your brave plans. At the end of every lesson, children write out their own brave plan to be safe within the given topic of that lesson. So there's resources there, and then these instructions notes are for parents. If you have questions, you want to know what you're about to walk through with your child, you can visit those notes and it'll guide you right through it. What we can all do is use real life moments. For heaven's sakes, we have them 24/7 now, right? As parents, we have a lot of time at home with our families right now. Use real life moments to have these conversations. Empower your child to trust their instincts and to tell you, and avoid anyone that they are not comfortable with. They do not always have to be polite. If someone is threatening them or scaring them or being rude, they have a right to just walk away, to just hang up, to leave that site. They do not have to respond. Make a contact list of the safe adults that your child trusts to talk to if they ever feel scared or confused, and for whatever reason, they can't talk to you. Let your child know that they have a safety net. That's really what that's about. Have you ever noticed in the Disney movies that all of the parents die? Like every Disney movie, practically, they're orphaned. That's a very scary thing for children. One of the ways that you can address that fear is by pointing out all of the adults who care about them and have a real conversation about what it means to be a safe adult. Who are the adults that they trust to talk to? And agree on 2 or 3 of them, and let those people know that you've given your child permission to reach out to them if they're ever afraid to tell you anything or they can't reach you for whatever reason. We want our young people to be asking other adults that you respect and trust in the event that they don't talk to you, right? We don't want them getting advice about critical safety issues from other 13-year-olds, for instance. And finally, focus on teaching life lessons over punishment. It's really critical, particularly with online safety. If you don't want your child to get really good at hiding things from you and lying, then do not take away the most important thing in their life right now. There may be occasion where you need to for a time, but I caution you, because we really want to keep those communication lines open should there be a real danger. And it's critically important that you really focus on the lessons that they can learn from those mistakes over the punishment. Believe your child if he or she says that there has been abuse, no matter who it is, or if somebody is being inappropriate with them. And when it comes to online safety, have them do screenshots and run and get you. Have them do a screenshot, not to delete it, not to panic and change the screen. Take a picture of it, yell for an adult to look at it. Recognizing and reporting signs of abuse. So this is an interesting time, and I am very sad to see that, to even think about how isolated our most vulnerable young people are when they are stuck at home in an abusive situation. And generally speaking, what I want folks to understand is that when you see a significant change in a child's behavior, whether it's, you know, a 5-year-old who suddenly starts wetting the bed when they hadn't done that in several years, or they start dressing differently, they start listening to different kinds of music really fast, extreme fears that were never there before, trouble walking, sitting, obviously, but significant changes in behavior are very often a sign that something is going on. It may not be abuse. Every child has nightmares sometimes, right? And we are all going through a process of that is emotional as well as just practically challenging. And one of the ways that you can support your child through that is to acknowledge how hard this is on everyone and how it's hard in different ways for different people at different times of day, right? We're all processing this in our own way. Talk about that. Because again, if you show your child that they are special, then they're going to be a lot less likely to look for that attention from someone else. Okay? When it comes to signs of abuse, there are 4 different kinds of abuse: physical, sexual, emotional, and neglect. And if you see any signs of this, if you know of a child that you think may be especially at risk, I hope that you will call and let authorities know so that they can do a wellness check, because these are vulnerable times for abused children. We've had a 44% decline in Southern California of reports of child abuse, and that's because nobody's seeing them outside of their home, right? So don't hesitate to check on folks, do a Zoom call, right? Ask for a video conference, Facebook sporadically, check in on them, make sure they're okay. And if they're not, call the police. These are some of the resources available to you. If you're not sure what to do, 211 is a great resource information line for, you can just describe the problem or what you're looking for, and they can point you to a resource that is available. At a time like this, more than ever before, we need to work together. We need to reach out for the things that we need, because the only way that we're all going to successfully navigate this situation now and for the months to come is when we work together, when we collaborate. And more so than ever before, we are truly in this together. You never know what words might just make all the difference, what resource you might share that might help a family that is at their limit. So be brave advocates for every child. Together we can better protect and empower our children to be brave and to be safe and to protect their joy. Thank you. I hope that you will visit us at thejoyfulchild.org and take advantage of some of the free resources that we've made available to you for now.